All right. Hopefully everyone can hear us. And yeah, thanks for coming. We're back after a week break, and we're ready to talk about the best format there is, Iron.
It's true. It is the best format, and I will fight you if you say otherwise.
And we don't have a
Yeah,
special
I believe
guest
it.
tonight, but that's because we have an extra special guest, which is
Oh
our
no.
reigning Perfect League champion.
Yeah, I guess that did happen, didn't it? Is uh is anyone actually here? I see like no activity in chat, and that's concerning. Usually, there's at least one random person popping in and being like, "Very first."
Says their viewers.
Okay,
Says their viewers.
okay, all right. Well, no, I was less concerned about there being viewers and more concerned about chat maybe being broken or something and not realizing it. Um, so yeah, hi everybody. Glad you're actually here and not a bunch of view bots that someone visited upon us. Uh, yeah,
Although the view bots would
I
be
did
kind of cool.
win. It would be appropriate. I did win Perfect League last week, which I think qualifies me to talk about Iron because those are the two most intimately linked formats there are in Perfect Team.
Pretty
Yes,
much, yeah. But hey, you got to start somewhere, right?
it's true. It's
So
true, and I just like Iron. It's comfy. You get to play the cards you want. Kind of just referring to the last time we talked about Iron, you can build your team in any one of a number of ways, and it'll work well enough, and you can go win some packs. Um, you can have your pet cards, and they won't hurt you nearly as much as they will in other formats. It's just it's a very cozy place to be.
it's also one where you got best of fives that run all the time too. So you can kind of
Yes,
enter a bunch and just see how they go.
yeah, the availability of best of fives is great. My understanding is that they're a little bit more time efficient for packs. They are a little bit more manual labor involved for data, if that's what you're in it for. But yeah, no, it's great. You've got choices,
I mean, they're
and
efficient for me because I can get knocked out of a best of five in like 20 minutes flat.
I guess if you're timing from the first loss,
Yeah, for sim.
yeah, so like 20 minutes and 10 seconds or something. I don't know
Yeah,
how
yeah.
long the sims actually take. Uh, yeah, format's great. Babe Ruth didn't ruin it as bad as I thought he would, which is pleasant.
All right, so let's see where we're at. So we'll just start overall by looking at where iron is
Um,
compared with. Hold
I,
on.
Actually, I do want to make a quick announcement here at the top, and we'll try to remember to make the same announcement at the end of the stream. There have been a lot of requests over the past month or two for us to talk about the live bronze metagame, which uh, we, and by we I mean all of the people involved in the stream, think would be hilarious, but it is very challenging isn't the right word, tedious, I guess, to collect a meaningful amount of data because every tournament, you know, you're playing like what, 6 games at most or something. So we would love to do a stream on the live bronze round robin, but in order to do that, we need your help collecting data.
And in general, if there's a format you like that's something that you'd like to see us do, if you can get us the data, we're happy to run the models.
That
So,
is also very, very true.
and if you can get us the
If you have
data and
such
be a good
things,
special guest expert, so much the better.
I'm going to paste a link to our official Discord. Uh, we should at some point probably stand up a small FAQ in that Discord about data formats, but um, the actual requirements I think are relatively thin. Um,
The best guy to
We
ask is
should.
DB actually, because he's our DB guy.
It's true. He's also, I think, busy with work today, so may or may not actually be around the stream. Um, but yeah, no, we'll touch base with him and make sure we get that to you in the Discord, and we'll stand up a thing for data contributions, and we look forward to doing some nonsense formats and maybe talking to you about them live on stream.
Sounds good. All right, yeah. So Iron. Last time we talked
Yeah.
about it was a couple months ago. So 134 wins is a lot in Iron, or really in any format. That's got to be up there on the overall leaderboard, right?
Do you wanna be on the stream? Do you want to take my place on the stream today? I don't have 134 wins in Iron. Well, I tried. Sorry, everybody. We have an expert, but they're unavailable to stream at this time, and you're stuck with me.
What's the lead in tournament wins? Actually, that's a good question.
I honestly don't know.
Without looking, I'm gonna. Oh, okay. Well, chat already knows. I was gonna say without looking, I'd guess somewhere in the 200 to 300 range at this point. 335 is a lot.
I need to apologize real quick here. I've been sick all day and haven't eaten yet, and my food's here, so I will be back in like 2 minutes.
Okay, so while Mike's getting himself fed, I guess let's go through just how things have changed in the last couple of months. So I guess the main new thing that came out, well, really two things. So one of the Platinum 2 cards had some interesting irons in it, as we're going to see. And it turns out that actually maybe the more impactful releases could even have been these extra cards that were dropped in Iron on Monday. So 29 since the last video. That's not nice. All right, well, it's really good if the stream's helping. That makes us feel really good. So yeah, thanks for letting us know. All right, so how has Iron changed? So if we just kind of compare at the top, how the typical ratings have changed, what we see is actually in some ways the hitters are a little bit worse, right? So a little lower contact, a little lower gap power, a little lower power, a little lower avoid K, and a lot more I. So maybe that just means a few people are listening to the stream and Warbot's convincing you that really all you do have to do is get on base. But I think you're also seeing that maybe the shape of a few of the new cards that are released has been a little bit higher I than some of the ones we had previously. And we'll see that as we go through. On the pitching side, again, it's maybe, if anything, a little bit of a change in shape. Actually, 5 fewer points of stuff in return for 4 of movement and 3 of control. But I guess, again, we're seeing sort of a relatively flat shape across the board in terms of the pitchers that we see, and maybe willing to sacrifice a little movement, which makes sense because there hasn't been a lot of power in most of the Iron bats. So,
yep, looks like pitchers are slowly getting better, and the shape is just changing a bit. Nothing too crazy.
Yeah, I think the other thing we can see, if you compare sort of the overall stats, we're still looking at a very left-handed meta, first off. It was 70% lefties before. It's actually 71% lefties in terms of innings right now. Now, that has meant that there are a few more right-handed batters in the format, but it's still not overwhelmingly right-handed. And maybe the two most significant changes that we're seeing, one is winning teams are now more likely to run only 7 bullpen arms instead of 8. They were still running 8 a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. And the other is the offense has ticked up a little bit. So a couple tenths of a run higher ERA in aggregate. So, all right. Well, as usual, why don't we start talking about some positions, right? So,
are we going to start with catcher?
We could. Well, we could start somewhere else if you want.
Nah, it's tradition.
Although, actually, hold on. I do have to make one very important change here. Yeah, here we go. Very, very important. Since we got you as our guest this week. Okay.
Oh dear. I want it on the record that I did not ask for that.
He in fact did not ask for that. TWIP starts in 4.5 hours. All right. I think we'll be good here. So, all right, let's start with catchers, shall we?
Yes.
And I guess really the catcher meta I don't think has changed too much since release. So
That's true.
So Warbot really still likes Ruiz, likes Bubbles, thinks Salkeld's bat is so good that he's worth playing despite the glove, but kind of likes him in that order and thinks that Salkeld probably is more of a DH still.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So, and there are a couple things that I'm doing differently. So I should mention I've actually now got an alt that's spamming iron, as well as a new player that kind of I've been helping spam iron, who's crushing me in iron. And I can tell you about some of the things we've been doing in the format as well. But one thing I'll mention is we're not paying as much attention to Warbot as some of the other formats, basically because of the meta. So everything Warbot's calculating here just assumes the typical distribution of lefty and righty pitchers. But this is an overwhelmingly left-handed meta, and that 71% lefties probably even underestimates it a bit, because as you get into the later rounds against stronger builds, it's even more left-handed. So that's something to keep in mind, and I think particularly for a card like Salkeld, if you start thinking about him maybe as a platoon bat, I'm not sure it's actually something you want to run if there are so few righties. And it'll be interesting to see what everyone else thinks. Actually, that's a good question for chat. How many of you are running all three of these catchers in your build? And how many have decided to drop one?
I would say what I'm up to, but
I guess what we're up to in a second.
I don't want to ruin the surprise.
Let's see. All right, lot of different options. It looks like. Let's see. Salkeld is a catcher from a couple of people. Actually, looks like everyone so far maybe is thinking of Salkeld as a catcher. RDT hasn't run him all year. So while we do this, let's see what the data say. So the data also like Ruiz narrowly the best, but it's pretty close, and all three of these are excellent. I think maybe the biggest conclusion is still you want to be running two of these three catchers in whichever order you like them. Right? That does seem pretty clear.
I absolutely agree with that. And I'm not going to say anything else because it looks, I mean, just look at the numbers, people.
I think there's been the conclusion really since the start of the season is all these catchers are excellent, and as the meta changes, maybe it changes a little bit which one's which. So I think there were a couple of places where Warbot was liking Bubbles a little better than Ruiz. At the very beginning of the season, when everyone's BABIP was through the roof and offense mattered a lot more, then Salkeld seemed to be best. But it seems like it's always one of these three that ends up at the top.
Why is it that whenever there's trouble?
Yep. All right. If you are going to run a platoon, so this is actually something that's new. And I think the reason for this is all three of these you notice are pretty close. But you see there's a little bit of a change in the shape of the pitching this time around. And with that little bit of a change, Warbot now actually does like Salkeld versus righty as a better catcher than Bubbles. Whereas last time we talked, Warbot still liked Bubbles and only thought about Salkeld as a DH.
Huh. That's fascinating, actually.
Yeah, I think it's just that they were close, and it's a slight difference in shape. We have actually made one other little adjustment to the model after the bronze stream. I don't know if we actually discussed this on air. But we were looking at some of the discrepancies with Harvey Keene and trying to figure out where his BABIP was going, and there are a couple minor adjustments we made too. But I don't think that's going to be the difference here, because Salkeld's BABIP isn't actually higher than Bubbles, right? Bubbles is the more BABIP guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Winterist. Well, in some ways that's actually almost irrelevant because most people are running all three of these on some level, but Salkeld is still the one on most rosters at 97%. And I think that makes sense. I think you're going to find most rosters have at least 2 and probably 3 of these catchers, and it's just a question of what positions you're running them.
But Salkeld's bat has been an absolute terror since day one, and there's nothing has happened to change that. I don't know that there's anything that could happen to change that. So,
I do think actually there's something that's happened a little bit to change it, and that's that almost all of the good pitchers that have been released for Iron have been lefties, and Salkeld is pretty splitty.
Even so, you do run into a righty now and again.
You do, and when you do, Salkeld clobbers him.
Yep.
But I will admit, actually, as we're going to see the build that I'm showing here, I'm actually no longer running Salkeld and Iron. Might be a mistake.
I'm at a loss for words.
But we'll get there. All right. So it doesn't really make sense to talk about budget picks in Iron because pretty much everybody in the meta, with the exception of a couple limited edition cards, is going to be quite affordable. The most expensive card we're going to be talking about otherwise on air tonight, I think, is 400 points or something. So instead, we're just going to highlight a few cards that might make sense for a cap build that are really efficient for their overall and that you might use, possibly in some of the lower caps, but even as filler, particularly in some of the high caps that still have a low Iron floor.
All right, I'm genuinely curious as to which one of these you picked.
Yeah, I think you really could have gone either way, but since at the moment he's on the top of both the model and the data, I think we'll mention Ruiz, but really I run both Bubbles and Ruiz in almost every cap format I can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think I'm not going to run both in, say, the gold cap tonight, just because the cap is high enough that I can run Muddy, and then only one of these two. But almost every cap format where you actually do have to make choices, they're just so efficient that I don't spend points on catcher. I just run Ruiz and Bubbles.
Yep. And I was just gonna note, looking at the two, that Ruiz's relative strengths compared to Bubbles are the sorts of things that play up in higher caps. Like defense always plays, I always plays. It's not a huge difference, but if you're trying to look for something to separate the two,
yeah, I think if you're only going to run one, I think Ruiz is slightly better of the two to run in caps, but they're both so efficient that I often find myself just running both. In fact, by the way, that's what I'm doing here. I'm running both. I guess I'm making it look like a platoon, but really it's pretty close both ways. And then what are you doing? You are running Salkeld.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not running Ruiz at all then, I guess.
That's correct.
So I can clearly see
the reasoning
why
here.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The fewer right-handed starters there are proportionally, the less uncomfortable I am with Salkeld taking those reps at catcher.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like that's sort of the dead simple explanation. Yeah.
And I'm curious why you're running Bubbles over Ruiz, because that's another really close decision.
Honestly, it's just kind of an arbitrary choice. I had to pick one.
It's clear they're very close. So
Yeah, like I wish I could say there was more to it than that, but there really isn't.
fair enough. Let's see. Any other
I just
catchers we should discuss?
I just like bubbles. I guess I don't know.
And I really think, for some of these positions we're going to discuss more than the top three, it's not really clear there are any other catchers that need to be discussed here, right? Fourth in the model is the live Austin Barnes, who's now 57 overall. Then the platinum Harry Danning. But really,
Uh, I think Santana's the one catcher that shows up from time to time, but more as a first baseman.
Santana's bat is better than Ruiz or Bubbles. And he's 48 overall.
But
The
he's
glove
just
might
not
be
the
worse than
catcher.
Salkeld is the problem.
Yeah,
Danning, yeah, sorry. If you Harry Danning, the model has is fifth, but there's a pretty big gap between really the top three and everybody else. Yeah, I think Taka Ox saying Santana's defense isn't good enough. Yeah, I think that's right. You can play Santana at first, you can DH him, but the defense is just going to be a real problem behind the plate. Although it is nice to have a switch hitting catcher available for low iron. All right, should we go on to first base then?
Mm-hmm.
All right, first base, where it's a little more complicated. Because actually everything that I was going to show you at first base changed this week.
Just this week, huh?
Yeah. So actually, maybe we should start with the data on this one. So here are the data at first base. And actually, this is where Santana shows up really strongly, just because of how good the bat is. You're getting acceptable defense at first base, which is someplace you can punt anyway. And then you've just got a switch hitting, well, I guess catcher eligible, but mainly a switch hitting guy with 71 power, 72 I, 66 gap power. Like, that card really should hit an iron.
And it appears as though it does, looking at the data.
And then we've got the couple guys that we talked about a lot last time, Rusty Staub and Phil Cavaretta from the Platinum 1. These are still both cards that are really widely available, even though Platinum 1's out of print, and you'd probably be well advised to pick up a copy at some point. Yeah, let's see. So the model was giving something similar until the start of the week. Had Rusty up there, and then Cavaretta. Santana was a little bit further down because the live Joey Votto and Max Muncy are worthy of consideration. But then they actually dropped several new cards on Monday. So here's the model's current top three. And I'll be honest, this is the first time I had seen these cards. So these are three new snapshots that just got dropped on Monday. And all of them kind of have interesting shapes and are maybe worth talking about.
I haven't seen those yet either, and
So Joe Start's a really interesting shape. It's a dead ball card, 1882 Providence Grays. So it's kind of got that dead ball shape. 71
that looks
BABIP,
like exactly, yeah.
No power, but 71
power.
BABIP, 76 I. Splits a little bit the wrong way, which is important for this meta because it's so left-handed. But even against lefties, you're getting 63 contact with 67 BABIP. Still getting 68 I. He's also at least an average base runner. So he's not going to steal a lot of bases, but you get 67 speed, 71 stealing, 69 base running, and certainly acceptable first base defense, for what you got.
That's exactly the sort of guy that I like running.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here trying to decide, like, would I play Joe Start over Rusty Staub VR? I don't know.
It's close at least,
Like,
yeah.
you're giving up an awful lot of extra base hits, but you're also walking a whole lot more.
Right, and of course, as soon as you mention walking a whole lot more, Warbot's going to jump at that, right?
Oh, of course.
Let's see. So you're saying Start has not hit. I guess if it's only 5 tournaments. Now, a couple people are saying they've had trouble getting Start to work, huh? Well, we'll have to see what happens when we get more data, because at this point, the card's only been out since Monday, and we have almost no data on him. So
Yeah, I do find that, especially at premium offensive positions, like, I'd run a shortstop like that with a shape like that in a heartbeat. But you can get away without power if you've got like really good gap power. But he kind of has neither, and that's a little concerning. Joe Judge, though,
I think it. Well, I think also irons in general a little bit higher scoring format, and so that also is going to help the guys that just get on base, because the rest of the lineup's going to help bring them in, right? When you calculate WOBA or something like that, there are assumptions made about the relative value of a walk versus a single versus a double and so forth. So the higher scoring a format is, the closer, say, a walk is to a single, right? Or the less valuable gap power is, because you're more likely to score from first base relative to second base.
Mhm.
And so that might be another thing to consider. And then Judge and Shealy have a little bit different shape, right? They do have the gap power instead of the BABIP. So I don't know if that's a shape that you like a little bit better.
it for sure is, at least on paper, right? Like, Judge kind of looks like Rusty Staub, but a little more well-rounded.
I guess one thing to think about with Judge is he's also very splitty. So it's an 18-point split in gap power, which is a lot of the number that you're seeing there. 92 versus righties and only 74 versus lefties. 8 points of contact, 9 points of eye. So that's something to keep in mind as well, right? So Start
Sure.
is
So if you're
finished.
only playing one, it
Well,
probably
well,
has to
well,
be
we'll,
Staub.
we'll just say Start's not off to a good
A good and auspicious beginning.
Beginning.
He's not had a good initial stretch of his time in Perfect Team 23.
Yes.
I
So
have finished eating, but I need to
I'm just looking.
wash my hands or things are going to get
All right.
terrible. So
I see.
I'll be back
Judge you're
in a moment.
saying is okay. Well, if Judge is expensive, it's probably just that it's a new card, because it's going to drop, at iron rates. So all these prices should come down pretty quickly. And then Shealy, only 46 overall, so he's going to be eligible for low iron. Shealy's, first off, right-handed, which helps more in this meta, but also a lot less splitty. So no split in BABIP, none in power, none in avoid Ks, none in contact, none in eye. His entire split is 2 points of gap power. So I think Shealy's a card that also would be pretty exciting to run in a cap, or certainly in a low iron format, just because you have no problems running him both ways if you're going to run him. I don't know, are other people in chat, are you running Judge or Shealy at all? I guess we'll have to see what happens when we get more data. But in any event, Warbot at least likes all three of these now as the top three, followed by Staub and Cavaretta and that group. So It'll be
Yeah,
interesting
it'll
to
be
see where
interesting
that
to
shakes
see.
out.
We're on the same page there.
Okay, and then if you're going to run a platoon, well, now this is where Warbot points out that Sheely really isn't splitty, but Joe Start is a little bit. So Start's more of a platoon bat. Sheely could be run both ways, and both of them are pretty playable. Let's see.
This is maybe a good time to remind, not you exactly, but everybody, that in a format that is very left-handed pitching dominant, if you can get yourself a first baseman that bats from the right side and also hits righties okay, you can, with confidence, run him both ways.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sheely. I think I'm going to actually try running that card in the next build I put together. All right, biggest winner. Well, a lot of that's availability, but this is now the Platinum 1 Rusty Staub. Up to 50%
Sure, and
builds.
that makes a ton of sense.
It does, yeah.
Right, like until I guess Monday, whenever the sort of a hot drop of iron and bronze cards came through, Rusty Staub was sort of the de facto first base option. If you were running one guy, and yeah, I guess Santana has sort of eaten into that a little bit, but he's not splitty. He hits well for both sides. He plays reasonable defense. You know, he's kind of your guy, at least before Santana.
I think that's right, yeah. All right, so Sheely's an interesting cap card here, but I think still at this point, if you're going to run one iron first baseman in caps, it's got to be Cavaretta, right?
Yeah.
That card's just so incredibly efficient for what you get for 2 points against your cap.
He also plays right field. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, he plays right.
Yeah, so he very, very common for cap teams that I've put together is to have Cavaretta backing up first, right, and DH.
He's also
not that your
in
DH particularly needs a backup, but
he's also in a pinch if, like me, you tend to mess these things up in perfect drafts. He is in a pinch, eligible in left and center. I don't think running him in center is a good idea, but it's better than having no center fielder.
But you can do it.
All right, so who are we actually running? That's a good question.
I don't know. Who are we running?
All right.
That's what I've tuned in today to learn who I'm running.
All right. So let's put them up. So we're both still running Rusty. I see. So you're running Zeal at first instead of at third here against lefties. It looks like.
Yeah. And I think that's after swearing up and down last time that I thought that was a bad idea and I wouldn't do it. So, you know, shrug.
Gets extra bats in the lineup. And I think I'm going to
value.
start running Sheely, but at the moment, I'm running the live Sano. This is just a really good card for 59 overall. You get the power and the eye. You get what you wanted to out of Santana.
Sure. I will go ahead and admit that I have not put that much thought into what my live card, like position player live options are, but I think there are a few. Sano's a good example. Matt Carpenter, I think, is also a card you could reasonably play.
Yeah, I like him a little better at third, but he does play first, and I think a couple outfield positions.
Yep, it's true.
See. In terms of the model, the live Joey Votto is up there as well. Also, surprisingly enough, the live Carlos Santana comes out as pretty playable here. Snapshot LaRoche. The rookie sensation Clint Hurdle is interesting maybe for caps. But I think the big thing is, as you were saying, you really do want to get a right-handed first baseman, and it's almost all lefty bats at the iron level. right?
Yeah.
Santana is a switch hitter, which helps, but I think that's why Shealy and Sano end up that high up.
Yep.
So the other thing I'll mention, and I think we're going to come back to this, I actually run Staub at a couple positions. He is eligible at right as well, for example. But mainly, I've got a build which is entirely focused on beating left-handed starters. That's my goal. That's what I mainly see late in tournaments. And if I happen to get the wrong draw in an early round and get knocked out, you just fire up another one. So I'm mostly focused on winning the late rounds when I get there.
Yeah, and that's a completely reasonable approach.
So, all right. So that's first base. How about second? So what do we got here?
How about second?
All right. So second base, and we go to
Fist.
the model. And we do have a new card at top. Before we were just looking at Jody Reed, but now the Platinum 2 Frankie Frisch edges him out. And it's actually a switch hitter finally in the meta here, which is also really nice.
Oh, fancy that.
Yeah, I think that's been a big thing potentially lacking, right? Has been finding enough switch hitters for this meta.
Yes. Yeah, no, Frisch is just a good card. Like, I think Jody Reed was very, very, very highly thought of. Not necessarily like defensively, but like the bat. And now you kind of look at this is a great side by side here.
Yeah.
Like, man, it's the same bat.
It's
Like
the same,
almost.
I mean, it's almost the same bat. You're giving up a little
But it
power for
switches.
13 points of eye. And so Reed's bat is going to be a little bit better. But Frisch is going to be better defensively, probably by enough to make up for that. It's close. Let's see. John Hummel also ends up there. Lonnie Fry, Jimmy Johnston, Benny McCoy. And what about the data?
What about the data?
So the data, they have Reed slightly ahead. They have Reed slightly ahead of Frisch. And I think if Reed were only eligible at second and you couldn't run him at shortstop, I think it would be a closer decision. I think, given that you need a second baseman and a shortstop, it seems pretty clear to me that you'd rather run Frisch at second and Reed at short. Because the drop-off is a lot bigger at short. And then we got the 42 overall Bobby Richardson up there, which is kind of interesting.
That is kind of interesting.
So
I remember there being a lot of talk about that card being like the hype around that card being a little overblown. So, seeing it show up like that is curious.
Yeah, it's a weird card because it's essentially he is going to get on base to some extent because of the singles and the gap power, but no power, no eye. So it's really an empty singles bat. And I think maybe this is the kind of bat that is starting to play better again in a higher run scoring format. But even so, I think I'd have a hard time running him, certainly over either of the other two.
Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to come up with a reason I'd want to run Richardson other than it's a cap and 42 is not many points, but I can't come up with much.
Yeah, so for what it's worth, the model has Richardson 7th, which is certainly solid. From a cap point of view, Richardson's an excellent card. Ron Oster also, I think, is a switch hitter and a little more balanced bat. I might even prefer him to Richardson in a lot of cap formats. So, yeah, it's a close call at least.
for
All
sure.
right. And then what does Warbot say if you're going to run a platoon? Well, then Reed, of course, is an even better bat against lefties, whereas Frisch is a switch hitter, is fine running both ways, but certainly fine against righties. I think that makes a lot of sense. The biggest winner, I'm going to guess that's Jody Reed because everyone's going to run Jody Reed somewhere, whether it's at second or short.
Yeah.
I think is the
Just
answer.
out of sheer number of appearances.
He's literally on 100% of the winning builds that we found here.
It would be interesting if we could see how often he's being played at second versus short, but yeah.
I wish there were a nice way to get that out of the stats without kind of manually sorting everything.
Boy, would it. Frisch is worse than Reed defensively at second base, which is why you're running Reed. I will have a comment on that shortly.
So go ahead. You want to?
No, we'll get there whenever we get.
Fair enough.
Or you could just reveal my picks now, and I could talk about them. That'd be fine too.
All right. Should we go talk about some picks real quick? Here, let's reveal our picks.
Is the cap pick Bobby Richardson?
No. So I think Richardson could be okay for cap picks, but actually all the things that Richardson does here really don't play at higher levels. The eye tends to play, but the eye goes away.
Yep.
Right?
Defense tends to play, but he's not that good defensively.
So it's mainly just the singles don't really play when you kind of go up. But I think there's a card we haven't really discussed here that maybe this is a good place to highlight, which is this 47. What?
I was going to say, I imagine he grounds into more double plays as you go up, just looking at the shape of his bat.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, because he doesn't strike out, so he's basically just.
It's the new Lonnie Frey.
Well, the old one, but.
Is it? There are no plate appearances. Is literally no one played him in Iron?
I think literally no one is playing him. But no, this is a card that's been around the whole time. And I just thought it was worth highlighting because of how much you get for 7 points. Normally in cap picks, you don't want to spend any points on the backups. But this is really quite a card for what you're getting for those 7 points in a cap format. So first off, you've got the eye and the bat, right? That's the biggest part of the bat. So that means that it's going to play. And even though he's a little bit splitty in some other ways, well, no, it's really the avoid Ks that are splitty. Everything else is not splitty. The eye, it's 75 versus righties, 71 versus lefties. He can also, in addition to second, Lonnie can play center and right. So really helps with kind of having a competent backup in several difficult positions. And that's particularly important because a lot of the time in caps, some of the shortstops that you end up running only play short. And so it's really nice to then have a middle infielder that can play both of these. Right?
Very good points. Yeah.
So I just thought it was worth highlighting this card. I'm not sure second base is even the best place to run him. I find myself running him in right field probably a little bit more than anything when I do.
It's always good to have a list of cards like that kind of under your cap when you're when you're building cap tournaments. It can devolve into a puzzle pretty quickly, right? You have the shape of your big bats, and you kind of need to find a way with a pack of chewing gum and a paper clip to fill out your bench.
Yeah,
and you can get Lonnie Frey on your team for a paper clip. So
pretty much, and I think it's particularly important when you have somebody where for those few extra points, you're actually getting a competent player, both defensively and offensively. You're getting a somewhat competent player for the 7 points at 3 different positions. And all 3 of those are positions where your backups are going to play a lot. So if you've got a guy that's playing second, center, and right, he's probably playing, 4 or 5 games, maybe even 5 games out of a 7-game series if you haven't had off days coming in. So I think it's worth investing the points. So that's why I thought it was worth highlighting him. All right, so what are we actually running? Well, I guess we're each doing something a little weird, right?
It's less weird. I know. I guess it's kind of weird.
All right, well, I'll let you go first then.
Sure. So I'm kind of doing a 3 people at 2 positions thing here, where I've got Frisch really playing full time at second base, and my shortstop playing full time at shortstop. But then also Jody Reed's playing like 1 out of every 3 days at both positions, both ways.
That makes sense.
Right? Like I can have 3 players that are all good to very good at what they do, and keep them all rested, and not worry about backups for either. So, yeah, Jody Reed is listed here nominally as the VL second baseman, but that's just because I wanted to get him on a slide somewhere to mention that.
Okay, and mine's probably a little tougher to defend. So here's the thinking. What I am mainly trying to do is to build a lineup that's going to clobber lefties, because I'm typically seeing at least 4 and often 5 lefty starters in the late rounds of tournaments, and that's where you make all your packs.
Sure.
You know, I will happily trade more first round losses for more semifinals or finals wins, because the first round losses, you just start another one immediately. You know, the irons fire all the time. That's one of the advantages.
Yeah, no, I think there's no need to defend that position here at all. I think that's pretty straightforward.
So with that in mind, I'm running a Marty Barrett that really has to be a platoon bat, only versus lefties. And I think in a typical situation, you know, this would just be an unplayable card because he only really should be playing versus lefties. You know, it's 12 points of eye, 10 points of contact, 16 points of gap power. If you're into avoid Ks, it's a full 22 points of avoid K.
Sure. But like if you're ever going to play you know, a guy just that's strictly a platoon bat, this is the metagame to do it in, right?
That's the thinking. Yeah, normally the only platoon bats you get are the lefties.
Yeah.
Here you can play righty platoon bats. So I'm sort of running Barrett both ways. And the reason I've got Marlon Anderson there on the other side instead of someone like Frisch is because Marlon also plays all these outfield positions. So in one card, essentially, I get someone that can play competent defense at second, left, center, and right. And that just makes it so easy to then have all my lefty mashers at every position I can find them.
Yeah, that's just a lot of value.
So that's why I'm running Barrett. And I don't know whether it's the right plan. I am, as you're going to see, I am running Reed at short instead of at second. But that's the thinking.
So I don't know that it necessarily needs to be like quote unquote the right plan. It's a very reasonable plan. Right? And sometimes that's all you're looking for.
I think it also depends on really what the meta is. So if I wanted the same plan, but I didn't want to commit quite so heavily, from Platinum Series 1, there's John Hummel. And it's still a right-handed bat.
We talked a lot about John Hummel last time.
Yeah.
Last time we did Iron, we talked a lot about Hummel. And for good reason.
Yeah, and I think if the meta were just a little bit more balanced, I'd be running Hummel instead of Barrett. But what I'm trying right now is I'm just willing to run some of these splitty bats, just absolutely mash lefties, and you know, hope that I can get through 5 rounds without drawing a team with a bunch of righties.
Yeah, that seems like a fine place to be to me.
So let's see, any other second baseman that really should be mentioned here? or new cards or something.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I guess the best live card that shows up here is sort of an out of position Matt Carpenter, who I think fits a lot better. I'm sure we're going to talk about him in a moment at third, I think, but is eligible at
Yeah.
second.
And it's got a nice looking bat. Probably should not be your second baseman.
No, he's what is he at second? Well, 26 because he's not fully trained, but he'd be 42 if he were fully trained. So
Yes.
probably not your second baseman.
Less than ideal.
Although I also don't understand how that card stayed iron. I would have expected that one to go a little higher. Let's see.
I
Rob
don't know,
Ref
man.
Snyder. Where is Ref Snyder on the... Okay, so Ref Snyder, I guess, is eligible at second because he's eligible almost everywhere but short. He's probably more of a third baseman, though. It looks like. Yeah, so Ref Snyder in the model ends up 8th on the third base list and is the second best live card behind Carpenter, but doesn't really seem like he'll fit at second. Oh, should we go on to third base then?
Yeah, let's talk some about third base.
All right, third base. So as usual, we'll start with the model. And despite the live re-rates, this actually looks pretty similar to last time. Todd Zeile is still just clobbering everybody. And then you got Matt
The
Carpenter.
advantages of being the advantages of being a right-handed bat in a left-handed format.
Yeah, so Todd Zeile is maybe the best example of a bat that really has to be a platoon bat. He's only eligible at third base. So in almost any other meta...
That's not true.
Sorry, you're right. He's eligible at first base. He just doesn't know how to play it.
He's tall.
Does say qualified to learn first base.
Yeah, anyone can play first base. It's easy. Tell him, Wash. Wait, that's not how that goes.
I think you're forgetting the rest of that. Yeah. We need a soundboard for some of that. But anyway, yes.
I'm sure we can come up with something.
So, but I think Zeile's a really fun card because it's the card you almost would never get to run, right? It's exclusively a lefty masher. Doesn't really play enough defense that you want to think about running him, anyway. Really shouldn't face right-handed pitching, but there's so many lefties that there's a spot for him, even though you can't really kind of put a full build around, because normally your platoon bat at least should be able to back up multiple positions or do something other than, play third base against left-handers. But the weird thing about iron right now is that's actually the way you need to think about your lefties, not the way you need to think about your righties.
What a planet.
And then, Matt Carpenter, we just mentioned, an example of a lefty that can play a few positions. And then Pinky Whitney, so another really good right-handed bat here.
A good right-handed bat that plays like acceptable third base defense.
Which, to be fair, is really more than you can say for Todd Zeile.
It's true.
That defense from Zeile, okay, it's listed as...
Which is why I've got Zeile playing completely unacceptable defense at first base.
But there is a huge gap defensively between Zeile and Pinky. It's just that Zeile is so incredibly good against lefties that you need the bat in the lineup.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I corrected from the last one of these that we did. I didn't have Zeile on my team then, and it was just not correct.
Unless the meta changes.
But it didn't change in the sort of way that would make Zeile
that's fair.
Exit stage right
so
or
looking
stage
at the
left
data,
early.
the data are similar to the model, except that, as you can see, Matt Carpenter sort of drops off. And I think that's just as simple as being a lefty bat, in a world filled with left-handed pitching. And then we got, so Billy Sullivan. So eligible at third, listed as catcher, and I'm guessing he's primarily being used as a DH. Does that sound right?
I can't imagine it's not.
To be fair, a better defensive third baseman than Zeal, I think. Just kind of looking at the numbers. And even a little bit of base running. So you get some extra value if you're running someone like Sullivan.
Zeal is not a low iron because he's a well-rounded, multifaceted player.
No. But actually, that's part of why low irons are so fun, is there are a lot of these cards that just have ridiculous looking shapes. Like one of my favorites, and I wish I could still run him, was the Tony Armas card. Just huge power, nothing else. And of course, now there's a better version of that in Kingman.
It's true. We'll talk about him later.
I think we'll get to him. So, all right, let's see. If we're going to run a platoon, what does Warbot say? Well, Warbot, of course, likes Carpenter and Zeal.
Zeal and someone. Oh, there we go.
Carpenter's fine, but you look at Zeal, as much as the card looks interesting overall, it's almost all what he's doing to lefties. I mean, you're getting 86 power, 70 eye. You're still getting 62 contact out of him.
Get the man in your lineup somewhere, VL.
Which basically means get him in your lineup every day at this point.
More or less. But, DH him or maybe play him at first base. In a pinch, play him at third.
Yep. Let's see. Biggest winner, of course, is also Zeal. He's in 97% of builds, so I don't think we have to sell our chat on running him.
All right. I'm gonna back off of that then, since we seem to already be there.
I will also say, as far as a cap pick, I mean, as much as there are a few interesting options, I think Zeal also really should be the cap pick, because for 9
Probably
points, you just,
you get a very functional player.
All right, so what are we running? Well, you're running Zeal at first, so you're not running Zeal at third. I'm running him, of course, versus lefties, and this is also where I'm running Carpenter. Mainly, again, because Carpenter is able to back up multiple positions for me. And I just want... It's sort of a little bit weird putting it together this way, because the opposite of the way I usually think about builds, but I want all of my left-handed bats to be the guys that play multiple positions acceptably and can be slid in anywhere so that I can get my 9 best righties in the lineup.
Sense to me.
Let's see. Johnny Fury saying Pinky over Zeal at third base.
Why are we all being mean to Cavicom over here?
Let's see. Lonnie Fry's great.
Yeah, Pinky is a great third baseman. You still need to fit Zeal into your lineup somewhere, and if the only place you can fit him is third base, well, that's just what you're doing.
Could even run him at DH, maybe.
Yeah, his glove isn't good enough for DH.
That's true. I mean, if you're a DH, you still have to catch the ball like at the end of the inning. The first baseman throws you a ball. You still got to be able to catch it and get it ready for them to run out on the field next half inning, right?
If you bobble it and fall down the dugout stairs, it's just nothing good happens from there.
It just looks bad, yeah. Especially if they get it on camera, and then
Next there's a biopic in 20 years. There's a 30 for 30. Remember that time that guy just totally beefed it and flipped over the dugout rail?
Yep. And so you do have to be able to catch as a DH, is what we're saying.
It's true. I stand by this.
All right. So But Pinky also makes sense. Let's see. Any other third baseman people are curious about? Probably not as many because everyone looks like they're running Zeal. So just behind Pinky, for what it's worth, just we'll mention a couple names. There's the new Paul Molitor, who looks kind of interesting. The All-Star Cookie Lavagetto, Eddie Foster. You can play Frankie Frisch at third as well, so that's another thing you can do from a roster building point of view. I guess Rob Refsnyder we had mentioned as a live card. I saw someone in chat mention they were thinking about running him. Actually, the live Josh Donaldson's also got an interesting shape as well. Let's see, anybody else? Probably most of the interesting ones, right?
So
All right. So let's talk shortstop then.
yes, let us talk
All right.
shortstop.
And I guess this is maybe the other place.
This is where
that,
things start to get spicy.
Right. So for me, this is where I'm going to run Jody Reed. And then we've also got a couple cards here that Warbot's picking out that we've got no data on. So maybe it's worth taking a quick look at those. We've talked a fair bit about Jody Reed for good reason.
The bat on that Felipe Lopez looks great, and the defense looks shameful.
Yeah, I mean it's I guess just a question of, is the bat good enough to make up for the glove, right?
Probably in some format, like some era format, that would be super appropriate.
Well, and as you point out, any card that's an iron, if it's interesting, it's usually because there's some things they're really good at and then some things that they can't do at all.
It's
So
true.
for what it's worth, it's an okay shortstop shape. So that 53 defense does have 69 range as the best attribute.
Not so bad. Kind of nice, actually.
Yeah, I mean, for comparison, Jody Reed's only got 72 range. Reed's just a better card, a couple other ways. So if you're comparing him to Reed, it's maybe not such a difference.
And you do get some power there, and you get the switch hitter.
Switch hitter, very flat bat. Joe Coppy, by the way, is also a completely flat bat. The split. Okay, no, he's got nine points of split in I.
I assume Felipe Lopez only plays shortstop.
He is eligible, but 0 training at second and third.
So he only plays shortstop. Okay.
He plays second and third in the same way that Zeal plays first.
So I would not go that far even. Yeah, that's probably what's going to keep me from messing around with that card then, because Jody Reed is too flexible. He just does too much.
I could see that. And then
Like the antithesis of
Joe Coppy's
of most
also
iron.
interesting. So Coppy, you get 84 range from an iron shortstop. Which
Sorry,
is a
how
lot.
much range?
84.
I thought that's what you said.
Yeah.
That's a lot of range.
That's a lot of range for an iron shortstop not named Mike Benjamin.
Oh, well, there's your problem.
No, but that's a lot of range. Also, technically qualified to learn second and third, but essentially only a shortstop. Even though he's a righty bat, like as I was saying, basically no split except for the eye. It's 9 points of eye.
I could see playing around with that card.
So that's an interesting card because he can play defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And the bat's not going to be as good as someone like Lopez, but the glove is. So for comparison, the model per 600 at bats says that Lopez is almost as good as Reed offensively. Just a tenth of a WAR behind. It has Coppy a full 2.5 WAR weaker than Jody Reed offensively, but makes up a fair fraction of that with the glove.
Yeah, I'd try him out.
Okay.
I mean, he's no Mike Benjamin, but
Well, so yeah, so if we go a little further down the model, Mike Benjamin ends up fourth. And I suspect we're going to talk about him a little bit here. Mike Benjamin ends up fourth, Desi Relaford, Bill Russell, Charlie Babb, Bill Allman. Then there's probably a bit of a gap. All right, let's see. What do the data say? Well, not surprisingly, Reed's at the top, and we don't have any data on the others. So after Reed, then
Mike
we get this
Benjamin,
Mike
yeah.
Benjamin. And I think maybe the biggest surprise to me is looking at the WOBA on that card. You know the glove's going to be great, but a 299 WOBA is actually much better than I thought that card was going to be hitting.
It's the gap power.
Well, I
Right,
think it's
like-
partly the gap power, and partly that, as much as Benjamin's bad offensively, he's slightly less bad against lefties,
Yeah, like
right?
he's being mentioned in the chat here. He's got 94 gap power VL. Like,
yeah,
that's a lot.
he's not going to do anything else, but he is going to hit doubles. Well, and he's got some base running ability, so he might even hit triples.
I'm fine with doubles all day. You've never heard anyone be like, he's just up there hitting a bunch of empty doubles.
That's true. As I was saying, Benjamin was second in the model until these two new cards. So the model also agrees Benjamin should be excellent. I think that's a really runnable card. Like, and the model after Benjamin, Desi Relaford, who's also great.
I really hope it's a runnable card.
Yep. So switch hitter plays a lot of positions, and then Bill Russell is next. So that's kind of what we're
If it's
seeing
not a
in the
runnable
data.
card, I'm going to look really silly in about 5 minutes.
Fair enough. All right. So what do we got if we're gonna platoon them? Well, if we're gonna platoon them, this is where Lopez is the switch hitter. You see, it's not very splitty. It's mainly just that Reed isn't as good versus righties. And so
Sure.
Lopez as the switch hitter can be run both ways. 714 slugging percentage for Mike Benjamin. If he's anywhere close to that, then he's by far the best shortstop in, silver?
Probably so, yeah.
Um,
That said, the pitching in silver is a little bit better, so he may struggle a little more.
It's true. Let's see. Biggest winner, well, of course, that's still Jody Reed. He's on 100% of rosters. If you're going to run one cap card, well, it's probably not too surprising from the discussion we've had. Mike Benjamin, I think, is probably the most necessary iron cap card, at least as a bat right now.
I'm trying to think of another one.
There are a couple pitchers that maybe would be contenders there, but as a bat, I think
Sure.
This is just absolutely essential for any cap build you want.
Yeah, I can imagine situations where like you really need you can't afford one player just to be the backup shortstop. But if you're not in one of those situations, dear me.
Yeah. And of course, Benjamin also is an excellent backup second baseman. Right?
Is he?
Yeah. So he's not fully trained, but with 97 range.
Right.
He's not fully trained with 97 range. He'll
Yeah,
certainly
that's
play
fair.
second.
Never mind. I take it all back. You got to have this card.
In a lot of cap formats, I'm simply running him as a starter. In some of the lower caps, where you have to run some cheap players, you can just start him at short and put your points elsewhere and not worry about it.
You absolutely can do that.
All right, so what are we actually running? Well, I'm just running Jody Reed both ways. I mainly want to clobber lefties, and he clobbers lefties. And you are running Mike Benjamin.
I am indeed. As promised.
Yep. If the glove's that good, you can totally get away with it.
The glove's that good.
I think it is.
It is. It really is.
In fact, I almost wonder whether the glove becomes so good that it starts killing a card like Jody Reed because the gap is so enormous.
I think he's going to have more staying power for sure.
Oh yeah, but Benjamin at least I think is going to be a cap card for the rest of the game.
I cannot imagine what they would release that would change that. Yeah.
Well, especially because he plays two positions. So even if you get one incredible low iron, if you get the equivalent of like a Cavaretta at second or short, Benjamin still plays the other way. Right?
Just wild. Yeah.
And the other thing is, as much as his bat's lousy, he does have a 66 sacrifice bunt. He can't bunt for a hit, but he can actually at least move the runners over.
He's so good. I don't know how he's a 41. He might have reached the top of the I don't know how this card is rated this number rankings.
I do understand how he's rated 41, right? Because the bat is so bad.
But it's not even that bad. Like, it's not good for sure. But if we're sitting here looking at a pretty deserving 59 and maybe the consensus best position player until this point.
Yeah.
And we're comparing this like 41 mopey bat, ridiculous glove. And imagining situations where he compares favorably. Just like, dear me.
Yeah. I guess the thinking is the bat has to be that bad. But you're right. He's got 57 BABIP.
He's got a million gap power. He can bunt.
I guess he'll strike out a lot and he doesn't walk.
Yeah, but as we've established, striking out a lot isn't a problem.
No.
Not walking is a bummer, but like when your glove is that much better than the next best option in the format.
Like, I agree. I think this is a must-have card, and hopefully everyone in chat's picked one up. If not, definitely pick one up while they're still in packs.
I think that card could have been rated a 52, and I would not have batted an eye at it.
As a 52, I still would play him in a lot of caps.
Yeah. Which suggests that perhaps 41 is a little on the low side.
Yeah, he's a good card. All right. In any event, he is deservedly our cap pick and a card that you need to pick up. So.
Yep.
All right. What do we got next? Should we do some outfielders?
Let's do some outfielders.
All right. All right, let's see. So we'll start with the model as usual. So Willie Harris comes out on top and nobody's running him. Is that right?
Is that a new card?
I don't think so. I think it's just one of these rookie sensations that's been around since day one, isn't it?
Did something change with the model that made this guy shake out to the top? Like, I don't remember talking about him last time either.
Let me just double check. No,
in short, though, who cares? Dave Kingman.
Yeah, we should talk about Kingman. No, I can certainly see why the model likes Willie Harris so much. I mean, he's got acceptable defense. You're getting some value from the base running. So maybe one of the things that changed was the slight change in BABIP model. And just being a lefty that can hit lefties a little bit. But really what you're getting is the 72 eye and the 72 gap power from a card that can play left, center, and second base. So I guess that's the argument, right? Yeah, I mean,
I think
on some level, all he has is eye and gap power, but that's a lot of eye.
it's a little bit eye. It's just a touch of eye.
And Kingman, well, Kingman's got power. So, yeah. Yeah, Kingman's got 103 power from an iron card. Sorry, from a card that's almost eligible for low iron, right?
Was Kingman a happy birthday dish card?
I believe it was, and it's a fun card.
And this is DishNet's present to us. Every year there's a card like this, and every year it's a lot of fun. And if you don't like Dave Kingman, we can't be friends.
You know,
that's maybe
the
strong,
other thing about Kingman, just since this is the kind of thing you'd consider, I should point out he is eligible at first base in the same way that Zeal is. So you could run Kingman and Zeal in the lineup.
He does play good defense he plays reasonable defense in left field.
Wait, low iron? I thought low iron was max 49. Is low iron max 50? Because I could have sworn the last time I did that weekly build that Lucas and those guys weren't eligible.
I was pretty sure that it was mistyped and it said less than or equal to 50, but actually only let you have 49s. That's my memory of it anyway. It's been a minute since I've put together a low iron roster.
I at least remember not being able to get Lucas on the roster unless something.
I remember having that moment of panic, like, oh wait, 50s are eligible. I have to rethink everything. And then I tried to add one to the roster, and it was like, no, you can't do that. What do you mean? It's 49 or lower.
Okay.
What's the equal sign doing there?
Okay, it shows it's 49 now. All right, that makes sense. That card would just be incredible if you could play
absolutely
him
disgusting.
Still a fun card. Still is absolutely going to rake. And even on his bad side, he's got 101 power versus righties.
Yeah, he's real good.
That's the kind of card I really want to run, and I think I would be running him if it were a slightly lower scoring format. But once you're up to like over 5 runs of ERA, I feel like the value of the homer just goes down a little bit. And I haven't quite convinced myself to run him. But it's fun to run him.
See, that is what I was about to touch on.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this is a game. Winning is fun. You know what else is fun? Dingers.
Running Dave Kingman?
Heck yes.
It's really hard to argue with that.
Like,
yeah, it's hard to argue.
You want to open your tournament report and see that this guy played 23 games and hit 16 home runs, which won't happen that often, but when it does, that's a memory. You get to keep that forever.
16 home runs and 8 singles?
That's about right. The old, 220 average, 700 slugging kind of nonsense.
Oh, yeah, like the old Rob Deere or Mickey Tettleton lines.
Yeah, he's Steve Balboni, but kind of better.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, well, let's see how what we got from the data. And here you go. According to the data, you should just run Dave Kingman. So if you need any justification to run Dave Kingman,
I am vindicated.
Here it is.
I don't believe in my own decisions, but if Warbot, that's not Warbot, but if the data says it is so, it must be.
Yep.
0.38 war is so much better than 0.25 war.
It is, and it comes with dingers.
So many dingers.
And he does play competent defense. No, it's just a fun card.
Stolen bases are fun, but don't do both of those at the same time. Probably have a different team with Dave Kingman and all of the stealing sliders being shoved to the right. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You are ostensibly an adult who can make your own decisions. That one's a bit questionable.
It is the case that Dave Kingman has 19 speed. Although 68 stealing, so, if you give him a big enough lead, he at least gets a good jump, right?
Yeah, I have had, since I have played this game, I've had the darndest time, mapping that shape of base running to something that makes sense in my head.
See, the funny thing is,
right?
As a player...
You see them all the time,
no,
right?
Players as a player, that's actually exactly my shape.
So,
I totally recognize that. So the deal
you're
is...
really good at a secondary lead, but if you don't get one, you can't steal?
I'm really good at reading the pitcher, and I have no actual speed. So what that means is, in practice, I can steal third off a lot of guys, and I can't steal second. Because stealing third is
don't pay enough attention
all
to you.
About, timing and reading the pitcher and figuring out how to get yourself in the right spot. But first base, you actually have to be fast. If you're on first and trying to steal second, you either got to be fast or it better be a hit and run.
Yeah, fair.
So yeah, I think if I were to make a card for me, well, I can't say it would be the Dave Kingman shape because I don't have that kind of power or really any kind of power. But
so before we move on here, shout outs to Bob Fothergill, who until the rise of Dave Kingman was the cult hero of left field and iron. But if you think it's not Dave Kingman now, again, we can't be friends.
No, I think it's got to be Kingman. I'd almost run Kingman. No, you got King Kelly. You can't. So Mike and I were talking about this earlier.
Oh, sure.
Actually, curious what chat thinks. We could actually do this as a challenge if we get an open tournament going. So constructed roster for kind of everyone in the Warbot stream, or at least the first 32 of us that want to enter. But the rules are you cannot have two players on the roster whose last names begin with the same letter. So probably you can't get to 26 because I think there are a couple letters we might not have anybody for. Well, there's no X for sure, right?
It seems unlikely that there would be an X, but I can't promise that there isn't.
Don't know if there are any others that we're missing. But we'll see. If chat's got some interest, maybe we'll set one of these up and then stream something like that. Yeah, you know what? All right, we could give you credit for X. We'll let you use a Xander or something like that, just so you can get someone on the roster. That sounds fair.
I don't know. We're already. This is the slippery slope. We allow this, and next thing we're gonna allow dogs to play shortstop because there isn't a rule against it.
Okay, all right. That's a good point. Snailman's got one for us.
There was an Air Bud baseball movie, right?
I think there was an Air Bud almost everything, wasn't there?
Air Bud baseball.
But that would be
there you go.
Yeah, Kingman,
Air Bud, seventh inning fetch.
That's horrible.
I didn't name the movie.
I know. Okay, so maybe it'll just be a 25-man roster if you can't find an X, but But yeah, for the K, I guess you're probably playing King Kelly over Dave Kingman, right?
Probably. Unless you're a person of taste and style, in which case, you know, who's to say?
Yeah, that would be a fun constructed roster though. So one each of A through Z. So here, if you want, you can put a link to the Discord and the stream. If you're interested, let us know in the Discord, and if we've got enough people, we'll try to set one of these up and take over and open sometime this week and see how it goes. Maybe.
Something fun. We like fun here at Warbot TVD.
After all, we're running Dave Kingman.
You know what else we like? Platoons in left field.
Platoons in left field. Yes, we do. Well, I think clearly the best platoon in left field involves Dave Kingman. So let's just.
My platoon in left field, I think, involves two Daves Kingman, but
because as much as Dave Kingman hits homers in general, he really hits homers against lefties.
How many pitchers do you need in iron?
So the average
12.
winner is running 12. You could run 13 still if you wanted to.
You could run 15 pitchers if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think the minimum's 12. And you want to make sure that you're not running like all true relievers in the bullpen at that point, because you may need some people throwing deeper into games as relievers.
It's true. All right, biggest winner. Well, unfortunately, the biggest winner is not Dave Kingman. Not enough people are running him. And in any event, he's winning one of every 18 tournaments too. So that's pretty good compared to these other lefties.
That is pretty good.
But all right, our biggest winner is still Fothergill. And
yeah, that's fair.
It's also a fun card.
Again, until the rise of Kingman, Bob Fothergill was the people's champion of left field. So it's hard to feel bad about that.
Agreed. All right.
Who's your cap pick?
So I think this is a good place to highlight just a couple cards that we didn't get a chance to talk about. Let's see. Oh, other cards we didn't get a chance to talk about in left. Chris Singleton. You can run Craig Gentry. The live Trace Thompson, who used to be kind of a cap hero. He's now up to 52 overall and actually almost just runnable in outfield positions, especially as a righty. So you got a few different options here. But just a card that maybe is worth highlighting is this Garrett Hampson, who suddenly seems to have popped up again. There's not much there in terms of the bat, but he just seems to end up on all of the cap rosters at the moment after the re-rate. Because everyone else that we've been looking at in the outfield has been uprated and cost too much.
Yeah, you just need a live body, and he is one. Congratulations, Garrett Hampson.
I mean, not only is he a live body, but he is a live body at multiple positions.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty typical of lower tier live position players in general, right? Like, most of their value, and I think this is true of the number, like the rating on the card as well, comes from their versatility and not from their strengths at any one thing. As you can kind of see by the bat shape here.
But actually,
you could put that bat on a 35 and I would believe you.
True. But this is also a card where a lot of the strengths are things that don't come out in this form. So, for example, he's listed as 22 in left field, but actually it's because he's not trained, and it would be 87 if fully trained. So he's got 75 outfield range playing left, center, and right. He also plays second, third, and short, and is qualified to learn first. Yeah, he does have some 74 speed, 85 stealing, 85 base running. He can bunt a little bit. I mean, he pretty much does everything except for like the really important things. Not so good at the really important things. But all the unimportant things, he's absolutely excellent.
Perfect.
So, better card than he looks, but as Mr. Audit says, not worth the 1 point. The thing is, it's really tough to find a 40 overall outfielder.
Yeah,
if you
Definitely
want
can
that,
be.
if you want them to play multiple positions, right? Or are you doing
Definitely
something
can be.
like, wait, Williams Astudillo technically plays right? Is that possible?
I would rather force the AI to play someone out of position, I think.
Let me look at that. Hold on. Wow. Okay. Astudillo, in addition to catcher, where he's listed as a 26 defensive catcher with 38 catcher ability, plays first, second, third, left, and right, and is qualified to learn shortstop. That's a little
I don't even know why you'd
terrifying.
run any other cards.
That's a little bit terrifying, isn't it?
Who have you got in left field?
Okay, all right, all right. Left. What have we got in left field? Let's see. So this is one where again I'm running the same guy both ways. I'm running Willingham, and I just want the bat. You know, again, it's a bat with a ton of eye and a ton of power, and he's going to do really well against lefties. And I'm just going to pretend righties don't exist.
Sure. I
Um,
gave away the game for mine. I'm running the fun card.
I really should be. You know what? I really should be running Dave Kingman. So I somehow don't have a copy of Dave Kingman yet. You'd think that just with ripping packs you'd get one, and you know I haven't. And yeah, I think
It's
I'm
only
going to
been out
start.
for a few
I might
weeks,
start running Dave Kingman.
I would.
But
In
I do
fact, I
want to point
am.
out. But I do want to point out that Willingham has a 373 WOBA.
Josh Willingham's a great card.
This
Dave
is
Kingman has a 392 WOBA.
yeah. Home runs are good.
As it turns out,
What you're really saying is home runs are good.
you've never heard anybody get up and complain about all of the empty home runs the guy's hitting.
No, who was it? I'm trying to remember. Was it Chris Davis that?
Just all this empty slugging.
Was it Chris Davis that had a season where he hit like 30 homers and all but 5 of them were solo shots or something?
It's believable.
Yeah.
I assume this is like Orioles Chris Davis.
Yeah. Orioles Chris Davis. Yeah.
Man, you're gonna make me go down like a research rabbit hole full of a lot of personal sadness here.
All right. Well, all right. We can move on to center if you want.
Yeah, I'll look into that later. I definitely am going to do that, and I'm not going to immediately deliberately forget.
I completely believe you. All right, center field. Right, center field.
Full disclosure: I own a Chris Davis shirt that I wear to Red Sox games in Boston because I want people to know that I'm an Orioles fan, but I also want them to know that I'm mostly harmless.
Yeah, I mean, really, you're mostly gonna pity that, right? You're not gonna.
Yeah. Like who's gonna fight me, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is what I've got: a guy making a hojillion dollars to bat 140 and be sad.
Yeah. Of course, I
Center field.
I remember when he had that long 0 for streak, and of course broke it against the Sox.
It was like 0 for 59 or something. It was just completely ridiculous. There's a baseball bits about it. If you don't know what baseball bits is, first of all, you're welcome. Second, yeah, go to YouTube and look for Foolish Bailey. I guess his channel's Foolish Baseball. He does baseball bits that are just like interesting deep dives into weird stuff that happens in baseball. And Chris Davis is 0 for, I want to say it was 59. It might have been more than that.
It was a lot.
Fascinating.
It was 54. 0 for 54. Looks like.
There you go.
That's got to be really tough, especially as a pro, right? Because there's just sort of nowhere to hide, right?
Like, so how do I communicate to the Red Sox home fans that like I'm not a Red Sox fan, but I'm all the way down with a good F the Yankees chant. And the answer that I came up with was the Chris Davis shirt.
I could see that. Right, center fielders. Let's see. So we'll start with the model as usual, and it looks pretty similar to before. So Willie Harris still shows up here, right? Again, just the bat is the kind of shape Warbot really likes. We still like Chick Stahl.
Yep.
And we see Hank Leiber now shows up. I suspect we're going to be talking about him a little bit more pretty soon, right?
We might be. He doesn't look like a center fielder though.
No, he's listed as a center fielder. He is technically qualified to learn right field. Listed as a center fielder, but I think he's a DH.
Yeah. He might have a good enough glove to DH.
Let's see. As for the data, both of them are up there, and also Chris Singleton. So that's kind of interesting.
Yes.
So there's, I guess, your much better defensive option, right? At least by comparison.
Yes.
There aren't a lot of excellent defensive options in center, I guess.
Chris Singleton for Iron is pretty excellent. I mean, if you look at the shape of the card, he's got a lot of range, but he's also got like very reasonable error and arm ratings.
And Warbot actually has Singleton narrowly fourth behind Leiber, despite having essentially no eye.
Yeah.
So that's a rarity that you even got Warbot kind of liking a card with no eye, because the rest of the shape is so good.
Where is Bobby Thompson on Warbot?
Okay, after Singleton, we got Ian Happ, and then the new Bobby Thompson, Craig Gentry, FP Santangelo.
So it sounds like sixth.
Yeah, sixth. Sixth, and also, though, an interesting option if you're going to platoon somebody, because he's going to mash lefties. I think that was my favorite card in the Low Iron Weekly, was the Bobby Thompson.
You do like you some lefty mashers.
I do like me some lefty mashers. And Bobby Thompson's definitely up there. So yeah, I would consider running him just an open iron if you're going to run Leiber even at DH. Let's see. Right. If you're going to platoon, well, then Stahl and Leiber just make a lot of sense. And this is where you can see the big value in Leiber. Look at how much better he is against lefties. Suddenly you get 78 power. You get a little bit more eye. Somehow less gap power, actually. But 85 contact from an iron bat with 78 power and some eye.
Probably one of those cards that, like, some of the gap power turns into regular power. VL.
Yeah, just some of those doubles just end up going over the fence.
Yeah, just swings the bat a little bit more comfortably from the one side, I guess. Has a little bit more pop from the left.
Could see that. Oh, hey, thanks to Nersha for the raid.
Thanks indeed. Welcome. We're currently talking about center fielders in Iron.
Best format in the game.
Best of 7 or best of 5. I don't think anything we've talked about so far is any less valid for best of 5. The biggest differences there are going to be in pitching, and we may have a word about that.
Yeah. Let's see. Right. Biggest winner. So the biggest winner is already Leiber, even though it's a newer card that not everyone has. Because he's just winning so often and he's so incredibly good.
Into the pitching in this format, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's such a lefty-heavy format, I think Leiber is just a must-run card right now. Whether you run him in center or DH, I think he's better as a DH.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find a way to work him into the old rosterino.
So
Probably by dropping down to 12 pitchers, if I'm honest.
I could see that. Uh, so as far as kind of a cap pick, I think this is maybe as good a place as any just to highlight one of our favorite cards in this
Please
FP
tell me it's FP
Santangelo.
Santangelo.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is just a great card, right?
This card
Uh,
is unreasonably good for a 48. Like he's a switch hitter, which is always worth some points. The shape of the bat isn't all that exciting, but it's also not bad. Right? It's like a lot of mid 50s and 64 gap power,
yeah,
which yeah, again, not super exciting, but for a utility player, that's crazy good.
yeah.
Plays like elite defense in center field and iron. Plays like playable. You could play his defense in gold probably in center field and feel good about it. Obviously, the bat
Well,
wouldn't play,
he's
but
got, he's got he's got 85 range in center.
yeah,
For comparison,
um,
in
he
in,
plays
perf- in
both.
perfect league, I'm still running Griffey in his 88 range.
He plays both corners. Not fully trained in either, but the raw numbers on the card are good enough that he's fine backing up your corner outfield positions. And he plays a better third base defense than Todd Zeal.
Yeah, in fact, you can platoon him with Zeal and then still run him as a backup center fielder or something.
You surely could. I think I'm using him as like my third base and also every outfield backup. The card's just outstanding. I want to
Yeah,
say I even have him like I kind of did with Jody Reed earlier. He's not really a starter for me, but he is on the roster, and I wanted to represent him somewhere. So I think I have him here as one of my two center fielders.
yeah. I think he just ends up in so many of these different cap builds.
Well, and I think the
So
tournaments per win there says it all, right? He's just a fantastic locker room presence. He does all of the things. He's got the intangibles. He's
he,
basically
he,
Derek Jeter if Derek
he,
Jeter were good at baseball.
he's a glue guy. Well, let's see. Well, no, hold on. He's got a little bit of infield range, so he might be better than Jeter.
That's true.
He can go to his left.
Like I said, he's basically like Derek Jeter if Derek Jeter were any good at baseball. Just a fabulous card all around.
See, this is what happens
Easily
when you get Sox and Orioles fans doing the stream.
easily one of my favorite cards this year. Regardless of format, it's just I'm so delighted this card exists.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, so what are we actually running? So as much as I'd like to run FP, this is one of the places that I'm sacrificing a little bit to just mash lefties. So I'm actually running Craig Gentry here, just to get a righty in there, and the defense works,
Sure.
and he hits lefties.
Yeah, like if that's how you're building the team, I think that makes a lot of sense. My team is more set up just like against neutral stuff because I haven't played in a little while, and it kind of took an extended break from tournaments because I sort of like I didn't quite burn myself out, but I wore myself pretty thin over the first couple months. So I just built this roster before the stream today.
Decided to just go win perfect league casually, and then something
Well,
like that.
I mean, like that I've been trying at, right? Like that's the one I sort of dropped my tournament involvement to a minimum over the last month so that I could like do enough with the perfect team league stuff without like actually burning myself out. And we can hold a little AMA at the end. Not that I have any interesting information for anybody. How do you win Perfect League? Have good cards, make good choices, get lucky.
I'd like to say sounds about right, but I've never done it. So
Well, you have it. You have to have the get lucky part, right? Like, don't get reverse swept in the finals.
hey, that wasn't the finals. That was the quarterfinals. And
last year
way too soon. Though. Way too soon.
wasn't there one last year that was like?
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's the one I
almost
was
won it
referring
last
to. I wasn't
year.
even thinking about this week. Yeah, you have to be good. You have to have good cards. And
And when you have a
maybe
3-0
more.
lead on Seawit, do better.
Yeah, I mean that's the lucky part, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, part of it was
it's-
lucky. Part of it was that Seawit also is an excellent build and manager, and
sure,
it's
sure,
not
and like,
it's not just luck. He's also putting a good build together.
well, yeah, I mean that's it's the same for him, right? Like, for him to get through that, he also has to be like lucky and good and have good cards,
Yep.
right? It's you have to get lucky along the way to win something like that, not because you're less deserving or your team is worse or whatever, but just because there's so much randomness in baseball, and boy, did they capture the randomness in this game. And you
Yep.
just need breaks to go your way, right? Like, I don't know. Look at that Mariners team that got bonked by the Yankees in the second round.
Yep.
Like, objectively, tremendously good team. Got kind of unlucky against the Yankees. What are you going to do? And that doesn't take anything away from the Yankees. They were also a very good team. But anyway,
And as for the voodoo, we should totally get Rumps on the stream to give us
yeah,
the
absolutely
advice
should.
on that one of these.
So we're gonna have to have like a let's do an all Phillies. What does Warbot put together with only Phillies players?
Oh, that could be fun. We could do some theme teams or something like that.
Yeah.
I still think we should
Oh,
try
that'd
the
be great.
alphabet one. We should definitely try the alphabet one too.
Oh, sure.
All right. Let's see. Okay, how about right field? Why don't we?
I guess we have to have someone in right field.
I think it's recommended. Uh,
Typically considered advisable.
so a lot of the guys we were talking about in left and center normally play all three positions, but in this case, there
Yeah.
are also a couple that really don't. So at the top of the model, we've still got Elmer Smith, who
Which is
only
another
plays
one of
right
those
and just has a great bat.
bonkers. Yeah, completely bonkers. 47. I don't get it.
Now, the weird thing about this card is I've actually strongly considered not running him anymore.
Why is that weird?
Just because it's such a lefty dominated meta. And so
Sure.
I've actually taken him off my build. I'm running him in bronze and I'm not running him in iron right now.
Again, you've set out to build a team for a purpose, and he doesn't suit that purpose. So
It's true.
that checks out.
But this is just a ridiculously good card for 47 overall.
It's so good.
And we talked about him a lot last time. We talked about him again on the bronze stream, so maybe we can move on. The new Kip Selbach is interesting as well. No one's really running him, and I think this is just entirely a Warbot special, right? He does one thing well, and it's eye.
It's on base.
I think the other thing we're seeing is somehow there seem to be fewer good outfield bats than infield bats right now, just in iron overall. Usually, left and right, you're just going to see a couple enormous bats that just had to get stuck in the field somewhere. So they went, especially in left, they just went down the defensive spectrum a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's probably true everywhere but in iron.
Yeah,
Where
for some reason in iron, when you figure
Well-
out what are the cards that have, one big strength and one big weakness. Because that's what these all are, right? They're typically cards that have a huge
Sure.
weakness,
So-
but they have one
so if-
strength that was enough to keep them in the majors.
like a corner outfielder with a weakness, like a bat that merits getting him into the lineup no matter what, with like dubious defense in the corners and iron is going to be like, basically untrained or have like 35 range or
Yeah.
just basically unplayable, right? The 97 Ted Williams is a really good example of a card in Perfect Team where the bat, like, that's the bat that you're fitting into the lineup. He plays like kind of completely unacceptable left field defense, but the bat is so good, you kind of maybe do it anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think, because we're already in the land of misfit toys in some ways, I don't think there's an equivalent at this level that makes sense.
No, but the thing is that this is part of what makes Iron so fun. And actually, Iron is the format where I would most like to see, like if I could design, like my favorite PTCS format.
Sure.
I think it would be an Iron, some kind of Iron or Iron Cap, with the extra rule that you actually get a 40-man roster, and for each series you can pick your favorite 26.
Yeah,
This is the kind of thing that you really want a sideboard for.
Sure. I have felt for some time that like regular season Perfect Team would be really, really interesting if we could have be stuck to a 40-man roster. Right, and this sort of came up last year as I was muddling through Perfect Team for the first time and watching the sheer number of pitchers that people would rotate in and out of their bullpen. Like people doing the full-on Tampa Bay Rays bullpen situation.
Yeah.
But because there's the 14-day cooldown, you can't really do that with a 40-man roster. So, like you wind up pitching maybe 45 or 50 pitchers over the course of the season. I just thought it would be very interesting if that was pared back considerably.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you were to continue to do releases,
I think I saw one team that was over 60 pitchers at one point last cycle.
If you kept doing releases on Thursday nights, you'd have to make some sort of allowance for that because people are going to want to play the hot new mission cards or what the things that they ripped that night. And certainly Out of the Park is going to want people to get excited to do that. So, there'd need to be some figuring out there, but I don't know.
Yeah, well,
I think
maybe the answer would be if you take a player off your 40-man, they can't come back on in the season.
I think you could do that. Yeah. Yeah. Just you can always swap someone out, but then they're ineligible to return until Monday morning.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Let's see. Anyway, we don't have that for Iron.
Right.
So, right.
Rate field. Yes. Observed data.
Let's see. The data.
Who we got?
Elmer Smith's also at the top. Ian Happ's up there. As you see, we don't have any data on Selbach. But
Rusty
the data
Staub
in the model
apparently plays right field.
Agree here. What?
Rusty Staub apparently plays right field, which
he does. I mean,
sure.
You say apparently, but he plays it about as well as Elmer.
Yeah, fair enough. His bat is arguably worse, which hurts my head.
Cavaretta also plays right if you need him to.
Love that card. More for Caps, though.
Let's see. If you're going to platoon, then maybe it's worth mentioning this Willie Tasby as well.
Yeah, let's mention this Willie Tasby.
Again, it's just sort of the typical Warbot shape, right? He's got a lot of eye. Yeah.
Walks McGee. It's fine.
But also, there's a little more BABIP there than it looks, right?
Sure.
That contact and that BABIP really do play a bit here. So, get on base. He'll have the same defense as Elmer. Obviously, Elmer's bat, versus righties is really ridiculous.
Silly.
But the flaw with Elmer, of course, is besides the defense, the flaw is terrible. That lefties exist.
Yeah. Darn those lefties, always ruining lefties.
So, Let's
Who's
see.
the winnerist?
Biggest winner, not too surprisingly, is Elmer. He's
It's
on
Elmer Smith.
94% of rosters. Uh, I think
Who's
if
our
you're,
cat pick? It's Elmer Smith.
it's got to be, right? Especially because outside of Iron, righties exist. And then Elmer's a great card.
It's true.
The problem is he's just so splitty. And just, I think, well, 94% of us are running him. So clearly everyone's familiar. But just to make the point, here, I'll just put him up for a second versus lefties. And you can see this enormous difference.
It's true.
And that's the reason that Warbot is saying
But
you should run Tasby
honestly,
instead.
that doesn't look that much worse than Ian Hab.
No, not worse than half. But this is why Tasby is good. Is that for Tasby, you've essentially
Sure.
converted some of that power to I, and the I is going to be more valuable, at least point for point, because Tasby doesn't have zero power. All right, what are we actually running here? So, as I've mentioned, I'm just completely committed to the idea that, I really just want to mash lefties. So I am, in fact, running Tasby. And then I've got Hap on the roster.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I've got Hap on the roster just to be able to, kind of cover all the other outfield positions that Marlon Anderson doesn't. But really, I'm hoping to run Tasby as much as possible, and I'm hoping I only face lefties.
There you go.
And even Hap as a switch hitter, right? So the idea is that Hap, as a switch hitter, he can sub for any of the three outfield positions, and he'll still hit lefties.
Yep.
In fact, that's the platoon you've got, right? As you're running Hap against lefties.
Yeah, he doesn't hit them as well as he hits righties, but that's kind of okay, right? He's not so much worse that he's unrunnable. And then between Hap and FP Santangelo, I've got all of my defensive outfield needs covered.
Okay, let's see. So if we go a little further down the list, we were asking about Incaviglia. Let's see. Okay, so going a little further down the list, after Hap, you got Michael Tucker, snapshot. Then you have the live Trace Thompson fifth. That's the card that, we started out the cycle just having him as the cheap cap card that played all three outfield positions. He's now just kind of on the fringes of the meta. Plus, he's a right-handed hitter. Marlon Anderson, Rusty Staub, the all-star Kosuke Fukudome, Rob Refsnyder appears there. I didn't know that. There's a Tommy Henrik at the Iron level 2. Is that a new card, or did I just miss that?
I don't know.
Let's see. I don't see Incaviglia in the top 15. I think someone asked about Ricky in left. The model has Ricky, the limited edition Ricky, 11th in left, although as a right-handed bat, maybe a little bit higher. Let's see. Incaviglia is not in the top 15. I can run it a little lower to kind of see where he ends up. I guess the thing with Incaviglia is that the model's going to underrate him a bit because it's assuming that there's the usual proportion of righties to lefties the way I'm doing this. So I should probably try to take a look at where Incaviglia ends up specifically against. Yeah, so as a two-way player, he ends up pretty far down the list. Let me see what he does just as a lefty specialist. While we're doing this, any others that people would want to ask about?
We're asking about Pete Incaviglia's facial hair rating.
See, this is where you need the face gen packs, right?
You really do.
Very important if you're going to run any of these historical players. All right, so is just against lefties. No, still only ends up kind of 8th. And I guess that's because even with the power, the defense just isn't there. So he's much higher. Yeah, fifth best bat. Selbach, the live Jordan Luplow is up there. So a little better bat than, say, Elmer. But the defense is really going to hurt him. Yeah, so I think you'd rather play someone like Tasby maybe. But if you want the power, yeah, what about the live Jordan Luplow? You're actually getting 74 power, 76 eye, and kind of acceptable defense against lefties. So maybe that's a solution if you want the high power card. Let's see. All right, should we? Oh, right, we got DH still, don't we?
I suppose we do.
All right, let's take.
I imagine it's going to be kind of a summary of a number of things we've said over the last couple hours.
So
but
what we should look
at it.
We tried to do here for the model is just to take out the players that are being starred elsewhere. So yeah, Salkeld, Leiber, Joe Judge, kind of the ones we talked about before. Oh, so Babe, okay. So Babe, that's one where actually I've got to make some changes to the model. Because right now, players that are listed as pitchers, I'm kind of not evaluating offensively. But if we evaluated Babe as a DH here, he's going to end up behind Salkeld by a little bit, I guess, right? So it's definitely interesting. What?
I wouldn't know.
I ran that by hand at one point the last time we did Iron. And I think the answer was he was comparable to Salkeld. No, that's right. He was slightly better than Salkeld. That's right. He was slightly better than Salkeld. But then the problem is there are so many lefties in the format that I think it's difficult to run a DH only that can only play against righties in this format. It's just a bad use of a roster spot, is my sense.
I have some thoughts on that that we can talk about when we get to pitching.
Fair enough. Let's see. Right. Some observed data. Kind of what we had talked about, right? So Leiber ends up a little bit ahead of Salkeld, just as a DH. So this is DB trying to kind of separate them out. And I think this mainly comes from the fact that they're both really splitty. They both kind of only play one way, but there are a lot more lefties in the format. And your DH, often ends up having to play both ways. And so maybe that's why Leiber ends up with the slightly higher WOBA here.
Maybe.
And you got Kingman up there, of course, too.
Or maybe it's the 13 points of BABIP. I don't know.
Could be. It is a big difference. Let's see. If you're going to platoon him, then of course Salkeld's great the one way. This is maybe another good place to plug Josh Willingham again as well.
Sure.
If you're running Leiber in center. If you're running Leiber at DH, then Leiber would be the answer here. Not too surprisingly, the biggest winner is still Salkeld, as we had talked about earlier. Just everybody's running him. Let's see. So budget picks at DH are always tricky.
Yeah.
But maybe this is just a good chance. Hold on, that card didn't go through. Why did that card not go through? Okay, we're having a couple technical issues bringing the card up we were looking for. But maybe there's actually, I'll just ask you while I'm figuring it out, are there any cards that you would sort of highlight as maybe an interesting bat?
In Iron, I don't know the format well enough.
I think we've covered most of the
Babe
really
Ruth, I guess.
ones.
But
yeah, I think we've covered most of the really interesting ones, right?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time thinking of anything.
Um, so I thought there was one more, if I can bring them up. That's what it was. So there was just one more that I thought was worth mentioning, just in terms of like some of the cap builds. For some reason, it's not even showing up in the data, but here we go. So I thought it was worth mentioning just this O'Neill Cruz as an interesting 40 overall from a roster construction point of view. You get quite a lot for the bat for your 40 overall. And he also
And
plays
you
more
get
positions than you would think. Pretty much.
does he is he
What?
is he eligible at first base?
That's a good question. Um, O'Neill without an apostrophe, of course, Cruz. So he's
It's
listed at shortstop and left, but he's
sure.
qualified to learn first, second, third, center, and right.
There you go. You could absolutely have this guy back up first base for you. He's 6'7". Like,
Yep.
how much more first basey does it get?
But the main thing is you're just getting a much better bat here than you are for
Sure.
any of your other 40 overall. So I don't think you're going to play a 40 overall DH in any of your cap formats, but if
Yeah,
you
probably
do,
not.
this is a card worth keeping track of. Especially if it turns out that he does change defensive ratings or something in the last update. Because even just a little bit more ability to play one or two positions, then if he stays at 40 overall, this is a great card. So, all right, what are we running here? Well, you're running Babe.
Yep.
And he hits for you, it looks like. So you do see from the stats point of view, though, he's a clear step behind Salkeld in terms of WOBA or WAR.
I think part of that is that Babe Ruth is more likely. People are more likely to let Babe Ruth bat VL than Salkeld because his splits aren't nearly as severe.
Yeah, I could see that. Let's see. Oh, we got a question about Eisenreich, by the way. I think the I, what is it, 28I. I think that just kind of kills him, at least in terms of Warbot, because that just means Warbot doesn't want to touch the bat. But it's a good card for roster construction, right? He plays left, center,
I
and
have
right, I think.
I have really come around on the miserable eye cards as long as it's like the one flaw with the bat for the format.
Well, the thing is, Eisenreich also
Um,
has no power, so it's two
yeah,
flaws.
that's tough then. Um,
So he's got 9 power,
the
28 I. It's essentially a lot of contact and some gap power. And if you have the
some of
glove of
the
Mike Benjamin, that works.
some of the Cal Ripken cards overperforming my expectations by a good distance. Sort of got me over the minimum I to be on my team thing, right? Like if the rest of the card is good enough, I can live. I can
Yeah.
live with one or two cards with no I.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another one. Snailman has pointed out. Babe only plays DH, where you have the 5% batting penalty, where Salkeld is getting some decent number of plate appearances at catcher.
Okay, that's true.
It'd
That's
be really,
fair.
really interesting if we could actually get some of this data with splits, like if that were even available, but it's not. So all we can do is guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice to prove some of these things. And what I'm doing,
Um,
I think I've already told you all what I'm doing. I'm just entirely committed to mashing lefties, and I'm running Lyra both ways because I'm really hoping he never faces a righty. And if he does, then I'm just way behind what I'd be getting out of someone like Salkeld. But I don't want to use the roster spot for the player that's only going to run, hopefully once a series.
Yeah, I'm playing Babe Ruth because I want to, and he's fun. That's it.
All right. Well, let's.
Babe Ruth qualifies under the Dave Kingman rule.
Well, maybe let's talk about some pitching then.
Sure,
So,
as long as I'm not asked to defend any of my choices, this will be fun.
well, if we had to, if our choices had to play defense, I think we'd be building a little differently. So, all right, pitching. As usual, we're only slightly behind schedule by a lot. So we'll do the pitching a little quicker, as always. Right. So start with the model. And this really does look pretty similar to what it did the last time we talked, I think. Right? Why is Ray Culp not loading stats?
That it doesn't look that different, at least from my memory.
No, I don't think it does. I was trying to figure out where the Ray Culp stats went. That's a new release, right?
Could be.
Okay. Well, he's got
I don't
85
actually know.
stuff, 58 movement, 39 control. And if you run him out of the pen, he's interesting. He's got 101 changeup.
That's a heck of a pitch.
Yeah. The changeup will play for sure. So. But yeah, this looks really pretty similar to what it did last time. I don't think there have been a lot of new cards that have come out that really changed the meta. Maybe the one new one here is the live Ryan Yarbrough. And that's kind of an interesting shape, right? It's very similar to Schertle.
Yes. I like that shape a lot.
Very similar to Schertle. Slightly splittier, maybe, but only slightly. So that's one card that I've started wanting to run.
Doesn't have quite as much stamina as some of the other guys up toward the top, but yeah.
And I guess and this Culp as well, which is really the opposite shape of everyone else. So that's why he's kind of an interesting one to show, because it's a stuff-heavy, control-light card, unlike all the others we're looking at here. All right, and what do we got in the actual data? As usual, this is one where we kind of get some different answers, all kind of in similar FIP ranges, I think, for the most part. But we do get a couple different shapes. So Floyd Yeomans, that's a shape much more similar to Culp, actually. Sam McDowell. So there does seem to be another shape that you can run here. I think the biggest thing we're seeing in both of these lists, and particularly the observed, is it's just all left-handed.
It is. And yeah, I think this is an example of Warbot thinking a lot more highly of control than reality seems to.
At least in terms of the shape, yeah.
Like the actual performing ones seem to be very movement dominant, where Warbot is still on control being where it's at.
I think part of this is that Warbot, what it's doing right now is it's essentially trying to find the pitchers to beat the hitters and trying to find the hitters to beat the pitchers and looking for kind of where it all shakes out.
Sure. So you think maybe reality is still iterating?
I mean, if you're going to run more of the low I cards, if you're going to be running cards like Kingman more often, then you need more movement and less control.
It's true.
But there's still a couple there that I'm shocked by, and this Ed Connolly Jr. That one's amazing to me.
Yeah. When I was looking at pitching, because I figured that was where I was going to make the most changes, which actually I think was incorrect, but I came across that card and how well it had done. One thing I would point out is that it's on 500 innings pitched. So perhaps take his position with a grain of salt. Also, he's got the worst FIP of all of the listed players. So I don't know what any of this means, but I'm too scared to run him.
I would be kind of terrified to run that card, but
like Yeomans, I will run. Right, like 38 control, 35 control. I've run pitchers with that before, and like I can deal with 7 walks per 9. I can plan around that and build a team expecting to have a few pitchers do that. It's very difficult to plan around a team or like a starting pitcher that walks 12 per 9 or worse.
Yeah, I was willing to run Zach Jackson, and I'm trying to remember what he was before the last rebate.
Yeah, the Zach Jackson experience.
Was he in the low 20s, maybe?
That sounds like maybe exactly 20. Something in that ballpark, yeah. And it was already so volatile, right? Like, it was basically shutdowns and blowups and nothing else.
I mean, because Yeomans is going to walk, 6 or something per 9 innings, but then he might strike out 10.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And he gets away, so that means he gets away with it.
Well, and I think that's like just on the cusp of like before you start regularly walking multiple people per inning.
Yeah.
Where if you've got an 18, like the second walk in an inning is so much worse than the first one.
I'm curious what his hold runners is actually. Because I wonder
no
if that's the way. Okay, yeah, 86 hold runners. So I wonder if that's the way to get away with it. Maybe.
Are you really getting away with it though?
Well, I wouldn't have thought so, but hey, you look at the data and apparently the answer is yes.
That's such a limited sample size. That has to be sample size related.
All right, let me see exactly what the model. I'm just curious how many walks you actually get for 18 control. It's got to be a lot, right?
I can't imagine it being less than 8.5 or 9.
Okay. Warbots got him at 9.7 Ks and 9.7 walks per 9 innings.
Oof. Until further notice, I'm all the way willing to write this off as a small sample size outlier.
And would project a 5.5 FIP.
Well, he's at a 5.45, so...
All right, well, sure. So maybe the answer is this is small sample size. But if anybody would like to tell us about the Ed Connolly Jr. experience next time, we're definitely curious.
I will contact my friends in mental health work and set up a support group, and y'all are going to be okay.
Let's see. All right, a couple just to mention who are more splitty. I mean, you're not really going to be running, but just a couple that aren't in the top 10 but are very splitty to point out. Ron Vallone, who does have good stats, because I think part of what this is telling you with Vallone is a lot of people are just running a standard build and they're running lefties anyway, despite it being such a left-handed meta, and so Vallone gets those guys out.
Checks out.
And then Fowler, if you want to pitch against my lineup, then Art Fowler looks pretty good.
So do you have any information on the xBABIP computation, how that's being done? Because
I would be the best person to ask.
I would have to refer you to DB on that, and he's not around today.
So we're not. Yeah, I think DB would
hop into our Discord, send him a message, or just just PM him on Discord. He'll tell you.
Let's see. All right. So let's see. Oh, right. Biggest winners and all that. Where are we at here? For the most part, of course, the biggest winners are just the ones that are being run, which makes sense. I think the biggest thing to notice is well, two things I want to point out. One, it's all these lefties. But the second thing, which is kind of incredible, is that they're all winning at, 20 tournaments per win or something. So there still seems to be a really big gap between what the managers that are really paying attention are running and some of the teams at the bottom of the list here.
Sounds right.
In other words, I would have thought that someone like Plank or Tannehill would just be on all the rosters, or Gary Lucas in particular.
A full list of cat picks. That's exciting.
Oh yeah, we do. We did try to. Yeah, it's tough to come up with a full list of cat picks, but hey, we had 5 spaces here, and we didn't want to have to redo the sheet, so All right. Well, we'll mention a few cap cards that are worth looking at. I think Eddie Plank is the really obvious one. If you're not running Eddie Plank in almost every cap format, you're probably missing something. And then just okay, so a couple of these new live cards don't seem to be getting the stats to copy over.
Oh, that Robbie Erlin is saucy.
Erlin, particularly for higher caps, I think is a good pick.
Yeah.
So Noah Lowry is a card I love in like low iron cap, but I think he's going to get hammered higher up. Wells and Erlin are really good shapes for the higher caps. So like an open low cap or something.
Yep.
If you decide to punt on 2 pitchers, so you don't just want Plank, but you want one more.
You're not going to have enough movement to like suppress home runs meaningfully anyway. So just like try not to walk people and give up solo shots.
Did we decide it was Chris Davis plan?
Haven't found it.
That's right. You were going to repress it, and I wasn't going to remind you.
After the stream. After the stream.
All right. So what are we at? So what are we actually running? Well, this time actually, I've decided to take a page out of your book and go with kind of the all lefty starters and all righty relievers.
Hey, sure.
So one thing I notice is that you've decided that Gary Lucas and Roy Moore are starters, whereas Warbot really wants to run him out of the pen.
No, see, I intuited the 5 lefty that you were going to run lefties and all lefties and what they were, so that I could list 5 different lefty starting pitchers.
Yeah, that's actually kind of incredible, isn't it? We're all running lefties, and we're running 10 different lefties. So it's a good question about Joe Black. You're going to see him on the reliever list instead of the starter list, at least from Warbot, because of the low stamina.
So, yeah. What's to be learned here? I'm much more willing to run low stamina starters and low control starters than you are, and that's the long and short of it.
And I think also lefties are just good in this format.
Yeah, that also is true.
And it's not just that there are 5 good lefties. There's actually a lot of good lefties in this format.
It's all true.
Okay, so then if you want some righties, let's talk relievers. So let's see. As before, we'll go to the model. So as I mentioned, this is where the model puts, put this in the right place. So this is where the model puts both Gary Lucas and Joe Black because of the stamina. And you notice, by the way, there's a big gap. So when we looked at Gary Lucas as a starter here, you saw a FIP of about 5 in 3,000 innings pitched. And you see out of the pen, that FIP 7/10 lower. And he's one of the guys where in terms of shape and in terms of matchups, he really gains the most getting to run out of the pen and getting to be brought in particularly against lefties as a reliever. let's see. Also Joe Black ends up here, and I'm a little bit surprised that we have no data on him. So
Definitely looks
yeah,
like the sort of pitcher that I would have in my starting lineup if he threw left-handed.
yeah. Oh, yep, that makes sense. So let's see. So what do you mean by level 0 on pitching and level 1 on hitting?
Oh, I can explain that for you.
All right.
So, in this is certainly a concept in like collectible card games. You know, like Magic is a good example, where level 0 is just like the baseline obvious metagame, right? Um, just like play the best
I see.
cards. Level 1 is play the stuff that beats level 0,
Okay. All
right?
right.
Like you know what the metagame is supposed to look like. So what do you play against, like, into that, right? And
Okay.
then
So it's kind of like levels in poker, and then eventually you get to about level
yeah,
4, which is
and then
like
you just like level yourself, and everything's
yeah, and at
terrible.
some point you get to like level 4, and it's just like bleep it, I call.
Kind of, yeah. Um, you know, like in Magic, sometimes you're looking to be at level 2 because like you're going to outplay all the people on level 0 in the early rounds, and then you're going to run into the good people that are on
Right.
level 1 in the later rounds and beat them. Uh, but trying to do that sort of thing uh, in Out of the Park is a little trickier.
Yeah, and I guess also not having a sideboard matters.
It can, yeah.
Let's see. So where are we in the data? For comparison, the data, of course, also love Gary Lucas. They also love some of the other converted starters. Ed Connolly shows up here as well.
Ed Connolly's a lot more believable to me as a reliever
With
than he is
even
as a
more
starter.
innings, Ed Connolly shows up here. Well, he'll get a stuff boost, but he's not going to get a control boost out
Yeah,
of the pen.
and a slightly lower FIP, actually almost a half a run lower. Considerably lower xBABIP. Well, so like the stuff boost, it may not be huge, but it's very meaningful given that like he's always pitching with a runner on first base.
And second, and yeah.
Yeah, right. Like the other way to reduce the number of times he walks 2 batters in an inning is to only ever let him pitch 1 inning.
Okay, and I guess he does get a real stuff boost because it starts out as 77 stuff, but he does have an 89 curve and a 74 sinker.
Yeah. So if I had it in me to run Ed Connolly Jr. In Iron, I would run him out of the pen on a 3 batter max and just like cross my fingers and hope for the best. I actually think he's a compelling stopper potentially.
Is there also an only bring in for a clean inning setting? Because I think you'd
I
need
don't think there
that.
is. I don't think there is. Well, no, like the reason I think he's maybe a compelling stopper is like if he has to get, like, let's say he comes in a high leverage situation with runners on second and third and 2 outs.
I see. Then you don't care if he walks the first guy.
Yeah, like if he gets 2 batters to like induce an out, I feel kind of okay with that. Right? Like it's not, it would not be my first plan, but if I were hellbent on running Ed Connolly Jr., that would be probably how I do it.
I guess one other advantage is he has no splits, and most of the relievers we're talking about, one of their flaws is that they're splitty.
Sure. Which I think given that loogies aren't legal anymore, having a left-handed reliever that doesn't like fold up like a tent against righties is valuable.
Makes sense. I mean, speaking of
Sure.
loogies, I think it's worth pointing out that at this point in Iron, there are some incredible specialists out there to really take
I'm
advantage
sorry,
of some of these one-sided lineups. So just to
I,
mention a
I,
couple of them.
I've only now just seen this Jake Diekman, and I've fallen in love.
I've liked that card since the beginning of the game, actually. 26 control is just a lot better than 18.
Yeah, it is, and those reverse splits are nice.
So Warbot really liked him. He's just outside the top 10 now, but Warbot really liked him at the beginning of the game, like before a few things got released and some of the lives got better.
Yeah.
Uh,
I kind of like
still
that
likes him
Tyler
in
Rogers.
historical Iron.
I thought real hard about putting that Tyler Rogers on my team. Just didn't fit ultimately.
No, but if you look at specialists, I don't think I can recall seeing something similar to this last year. That you get 128 movement, one way to be fair, but 128 movement on your good side out of an Iron. I mean, that is pretty ridiculous.
It's kind of silly.
So I'm actually a little bit curious now for Tyler Rogers. I'm curious what his real life splits are. Yeah, Tim Hill has that, but Tim Hill is a lot more expensive. So you can see that in some of the higher lives, but to get that out of an Iron is what's remarkable. Right? Tim Hill,
Yeah.
Tim Hill, you're spending like a high silver to get that movement. So, all right. Well, finally, what are we running here?
What are we running here?
All right. Oh, right. First couple sort of cap picks. And this is probably the place the picks are most valuable because even if you're not going to be running a cheap starter, I think Tim Hill was a gold, wasn't he, Cavacom? Wasn't he a gold before the last update? I see he started at 76, but I think he might have gotten up to a gold.
But yeah, as to what you were about to say, people have always and will always throw low Iron relievers in cap formats because they're the least. They're on the field the least, so they're going to have the least impact, broadly speaking, on your team. So it's if you have to cut points somewhere, that's the place to do it.
Yep. All right, so a few options here. We will throw Gary Lucas on the list just because a lot of you are willing to pay the 10 points to kind of run him as a semi-legit bullpen option in some formats. Clipper doesn't show up either. Okay, there's something with a couple of the live cards not showing up. We're going to have to fix the database, I think.
We'll figure it out.
But Joe Black is by far the best option here. And I think he's actually just plain runnable in Iron for what it's worth. But he's certainly runnable as a cap option. And then you see several others just with an interesting shape. So if you're willing to go up a couple points from 40 or run Austin Pruitt, you can get some of the really high control guys who at least can survive. As you said, if you're going to give up homers to all of the high-rated players, at least their solo shots. And then maybe a mixture of a couple with other shapes that just look a little bit efficient. Right. So what are we actually running here? So you're running 8, and I'm running 7 for one thing.
Yeah, and again,
we're both doing the same thing. It looks like
I will probably be running the 7 that are here in an effort to get the lefty Slayer DH on the roster.
So we're both now committed to running the righty relievers and the lefty starters. And wait, do we actually disagree on?
We've both got Monbouquet.
We've got Monbouquet. We've both got
Valdez. And then it's just like an assortment of, here's some reasonable guys. I don't know. They all kind of look the same to me.
So I am running Tyler Rogers. I'm trying to run him as a specialist. Don't know if it's going to work. But I think the one I
I
feel
really
worst
like.
about is not getting Gary Lucas on the roster. And
mm,
if I were running a normal two-sided roster, I would do it. I've actually even thought about adding him anyway
if you
instead of
wanted to
someone
run
like
him on
Rogers.
on your team, I would drop your worst pet arm and just run him as a stopper.
Yeah, I think that could make sense. The other thing I'm doing, just because I think that adds a little bit, is I'm running righty opener into lefty starter into righty reliever. And it's not even a question of trying to take advantage of opener lineups as much as just kind of switching around. So even if you run an opener lineup, if you're running opener lineups, you usually don't get the substitution patterns right because the AI manager is just not good at that. So anyway, think the main conclusion is just you can do almost anything in Iron and have fun with it. And run
It's
Dave
true.
Kingman.
Always run Dave King. Always be Kingmaning.
Um, I don't know. Any other cards people wanted to ask about? We can almost end at a
Specialists
reasonable hour this time. Otherwise,
specialists are tough. I think they're the bullpen role that I've had the least success getting to run when I want them to, and also like more than 2 or 3 outings a year. Like I can either have my lefty specialists only pitch to lefties, or I can have them pitch more than 20 games in a or 20 innings in a full season. But I can't do both.
yep. Oh, I found another X by the way for the list. In fact, there is now a major league player whose first name begins with an XZ.
Exhibit made the pros.
So anyway,
Look, we heard you like baseball, so we put some baseball in your baseball. Um, yeah.
anyway,
This
so
has been
sounds good.
a quick look at Iron.
At least as quick as we're capable of doing for any of these, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
And hopefully for once we've timed it so the meta won't entirely change tonight. I am looking forward to some of these Negro League releases, but it sounds like we probably aren't going to get a bunch of irons.
Probably not. No.
Oh,
If you're
about if
willing
you're
to
willing to
pay
pay
the
the
well,
points, I was talking about that for cap tournaments. So the idea is that usually in cap tournaments, the back end of your bullpen is just going to be the cheapest cards that you can find because you're hoping that they never appear in any kind of leverage situation. So if you're willing to go up from 40 points to 50, you get a lot out of Lucas. But he does cost you 10 points in a cap situation. I don't know, anything in particular you're looking forward to from the releases? I mean, I'm hoping it's really going to fit my team because I desperately need a left-handed center fielder and another right-handed starter. So I'm really hoping for like a
get a
Sats and
good Satchel
Charleston that'll
Page.
fit perfectly.
Charleston would be nice. I wish it weren't the way that it is, but it feels like for whatever reason, all of the bats that are reasonably able to play defense in the corner, in corner outfield positions, wind up being Negro League players.
Yeah.
Like why those listed in center field can like be fully trainable in the corners and players like Richie Ashburn can't. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so yeah, like I'm looking. I would like an absolute glove wizard Willie Wells.
That could be fun.
Obviously, I'm not expecting anything that's going to touch Alan Trammell, but
Well, they really
maybe
can't do that given that they haven't even given out the Trammell yet.
it's true. But I can hope that this is like a lefty shortstop that kind of somewhat approaches Barry Larkin.
Could see that. Okay, well, thanks everyone. Then let's see. Is there anybody to raid?
I think OTP really needs to shove it and just let us train people wherever we want to train them. Is what I think. I hope that's not too controversial. I don't want to get us banned.
I mean, I think training could be fun, but the thing is, right now with the pace of training, I think realistically the meta probably moves faster than the training does.
I think that given that the training is as slow as it is, there's not really a lot of harm letting you train. At least, like, why can't I train my center fielders in corner outfield positions? Right? Why can't I train all of the shortstops at second base? Like, you don't have to have universal training in other positions, but those paths that players will typically follow in real life.
Yeah.
Where, like if your bat's too good to keep in the or to leave the lineup on the regular, and maybe you're not quite as rangy, you move from shortstop to third base. If you don't quite have the arm to play shortstop, maybe you move to second base. Like why can we not do that with some of these players?
I guess the idea is that they have to think more about the game balance, but let's see. Oh, and to answer Bailey's question,
they could continue not thinking about the game balance, and it will still be fine.
See, to answer
just
Bailey's
as it
question,
is today.
We have done a perfect draft stream before, but maybe we could do another one in an upcoming week. Some of the updated cards.
You could probably talk to anyone.
I don't see any of the affiliated streamers, but I do see one OTP stream. So why don't we send everyone there? Does that work?
Works for me. Just remember to be cool, everybody. We're representing the community. So
all right,
let's go give them a nice hug, whoever they are.
And if you have some data for a format you really want us to run next week, we're happy to run it.
Oh yeah, the open call from the beginning of the stream. There's been a lot of talk about wanting to take a look at the live bronze round robin, which we'd be very happy to do if someone gifted a bunch of data to us, but it's very difficult for any one person to come up with enough data for that format to run it. So if that's the thing you want, start collecting data.
All right.
If there's something else you want us to look at and you have data and you maybe want to come on the stream, we could probably do that too. Here's a link to the Discord. If you're not in there already, that's the place to go to show up, to give us data.
All right.
That's my pitch.
And we'll see you all next week. Thanks again.
Bye, everybody. Something about fences.
Yep.
Keep fencing in your backyard.
Something like that. All right. I think we got the raid figured out. See you all next week.